Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Audra, your host of Women in the Arena podcast, where we celebrate women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. It's November, and the holidays are upon us. And since 2020 has been a ride, and small businesses have been hit the hardest, we thought for the month of November that we wanted to do something proactive to help these small businesses. So each week, we are going to highlight a female small business. I hope you enjoy the interviews, and even more so, I hope you go in and check out their websites. They have some amazing things, and every dollar you spend with them is going to go directly back into their business. I am so excited for you all to meet all of these amazing women, and I can't wait to get started, so let's start the show. Welcome in, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited to introduce to you these two ladies that are with me today. The entire month, we are celebrating female small business owners, and we are kicking it off with some pretty extraordinary women. I am here with Sue Tipton and Norma Poole. Susan is the owner and operator of Acquiesce Winery in Lodi, California. She is truly unique, and she makes an incredible white wine. She is one of the only female wineries in the entire state of California, and she's the only all-white wine winery in all of California, northern, southern, all of California. She was started from humble beginnings, and she has become very well known, and she is joining us today. Also with us is Norma Poole, who is the sommelier for Acquiesce Wineries. She has over 25 years experience in being in the wine service industry. She has worked for Cakebread Cellars, Klein Cellars, Cardinal Loya, Curvation Winery, and Three Wine Company. She has been a wine buyer, sommelier, and retail manager for JV Wine and Spirits in Napa, California, and now the sommelier for Acquiesce. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce you to these remarkable ladies, Norma and Sue. Norma, thank you, and Sue, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the show.
Well, our pleasure.
Thank you.
Honored to be here.
I am so excited. If you guys can't tell, I am a huge fan of these ladies. I was introduced to their winery 2 years ago because I love wine, but I can't drink red. And when I went to their tasting room, they made the most beautiful white wine, and it made me enjoy wine again. And when I started this show, I knew I had to have them on here. So I stalked them and asked them to come on. So, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. And we want to know a little bit more about you. So, Sue, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and Norma, the same thing.
Well, probably start from the beginning. I'm a Chicagoan. I was raised in a blue-collar family. My father was a factory worker, but also loved coming home and watching Julia Child on TV. And he made some incredible meals. He was all about farm fresh before it was a term that we used daily. And also he kind of stoked the fires for me about food and good food and how to pair it. So that's kind of my history, and we're Irish, so we always had people over on the weekends. And so I'm kind of continuing that same thing here with the tasting room. But I raised 3 boys, lived in multiple states after Chicago, moved to Michigan, Sweden, Colorado, Oregon, Texas, and in 2000 moved to California. Our winery is called Acquiesce, and the reason it's called Acquiesce is when we were living in Oregon, my husband Rodney and I were listening to Katie Lang on the stereo, and she was singing the song Acquiesce. And he was a corporate executive at the time and had just traveled to 10 different countries in 10 days. And we're listening to the song, and he said, we're going to have a place one day, and we're going to call it Acquiesce. And I said, really? What's it going to be like? And he said, well, we'll see the sunrise and the sunset. We'll have property there, and we're going to really enjoy our lives there. So I qualify him as a visionary. When we bought our property in 2003 at Acquiesce, we called the property Acquiesce. Had 12 acres of Zinfandel grapes, and that pretty much started our journey into the wine world.
I love that. And we're gonna dive into that story further. But before we do, Norma, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, 5 generations, actually. I'm the first rebel to move to the West Coast. And like Sue, we cooked, we had family over, and everybody in my family cooked, and just enjoyed the foods that we raised in our garden, and the everything. It just always have beautiful, beautiful food. But I fell in love with, it's kind of funny, Sue said, Julia Child. I read My Life in France about 28 years ago on a plane heading to California. I had actually graduated from a school back east, Ivy League school, with 2 kids, single mom. And I was on the plane. I read My Life in France. And then I read A Year in Provence, and landed in Sacramento, of all places. Quickly said, I can't live here. This is the desert. And and then I had some really good friends from New York that actually got a small place in Sacramento. They worked for the state of California. They were scientists. They started making wine in their garage. Well, I hadn't really had wine in upstate New York, even though we have great wineries there. Started drinking their wine and helping them blend, and just the culture and the stories and fun we would have together. I fell in love with the culture of wine, I guess you could say, and learning about the different wines. So I met who is my husband now, and we moved to the Napa Valley and completely immersed myself into, I want to learn more about this. I've always valued education, and I love instruction. I like helping people get excited about what they're doing. Life is short. But I was, in my 40s going into this. And so I applied for studied for the sommelier, the certificate level, about 16 years before anybody else was doing it, and passed it the first time around. And then I decided to go to attend Napa Valley College in their viticulture program. And I got a certificate in that. And so I made wine, helped them grow the grapes, and at the same time working at wineries. In the wine business, you have to have like 2 or 3 jobs going. But I just said, I want to learn more about this. I am fascinated by the science, the viticulture aspect, as well as the wine growing aspect. And what helped is my husband is also a sommelier, and worked at some great restaurants in the Napa Valley, which we were very excited about being included in their great tastings with Master Somms. And one of them was the French Laundry. That's when I fell in love with French wine. Well, okay. So I'm like, I can't drink California wine anymore. Well, I'm going to jump forward to the present day. Wine tasting in Lodi a couple of years ago. And someone recommended Acquiesce, and I kind of wanted something different to do. And I read something about Sue and her brilliance and what she's doing, and I thought, this woman has got it together. I want to know her. Wrote her a letter. I tasted her wine. First of all, I said, no way, this can't be California wine, because I love French wine. And okay, so I wrote her a letter, and I said, I want to work for you. So that's how I ended up at Acquiesce, and it has changed my life. It has changed my life.
That, in and of itself, the fact that you reached out and you took a risk and said, I love your wine. I want to come
Yeah.
work for you.
Yeah.
I've been preaching that for a very long time. Take a risk because you never know what'll happen. And you took a risk. Sue said yes, and it's changed your life.
Oh yeah.
And I am so grateful for both of you for taking risks and doing things your own way. And that's part of what we wanted to talk about today is, and first, Sue, you are a female in a very, very male dominated organization and very male dominated field. Uh, how did you start? I mean, first of all, I need to give everybody the picture. Their property in Lodi is stunning and spectacular, but I know that your journey wasn't easy, but tell us a little bit about how you came to be a winery owner.
Well, it started slow. And I didn't initially have a vision. So I'd like to tell people to try to just go with what you want to do and what you love. Um, starting the whole winery, I started making wine from the Zinfandel grapes on our property. The very first year that we moved here in small quantities as a home winemaker. I found the reds fairly easy to make, but I was also trying to make a rosé from the grapes and found them a little more challenging. And during this process of trying to figure out how to do these things properly, I fell in love with a white Chateauneuf de Pape wine. It's a white blend from the region of Chateauneuf de Pape in the Rhone region of France, the southern Rhone. And like I said, we lived many places and we lived in Europe for a while. I had never tried a white Chateauneuf de Pape. And I come to find out why I probably hadn't. The region only has 6% of their grapes are white. So they're known for their Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre blends. They export to 50 different countries. And the price points in the U.S. for these wines are usually around $75 a bottle, which is probably another reason why I hadn't tried one.
Because that's steep for a bottle of wine.
It is. And, they're able to kind of have the price point because of the rarity of the grape varietals and the demand for them. And so anyway, I happened to find one that was pretty inexpensive. And so I didn't say at that point, I'm going to make these wines, but I went back to the store with the bottle and said, I would please like 2 cases of this amazing wine. And they got on their computer and they said, you're holding the last bottle in California. And that's...
Wow, it was that rare that you were holding the very last bottle in the entire state.
Right. And that kind of started my curiosity going and saying, okay, so what is this grape? What is this wine all about? Where is it possible to even maybe get some vines and try this wine? And so since it's a blend, we decided to plant, still kind of under the home winemaking theme. We planted a half acre of head-trained Grenache Blanc. And just after 1 year of it being in the ground, we were so thrilled with it and planted some more grapes. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, we either have to stop this. We don't have that many friends that we could give away that much wine. Or we have to open a winery. So we had on our property a 100-year-old barn that was in disrepair. There were owls living in it. Creatures that owls eat were living in it, and holes in the roof. And my husband loves a project, so he was thrilled with the idea of fixing up this 100-year-old barn into a tasting room. And so we started on that project probably in 2008, about the same time we were planting some of the vines. And opened our tasting room in 2012. And it was quite interesting because I wanted to stick with these white wines and I wanted to do them right. And like I said, the reds I found relatively easy to make, and the whites and the rosés were a huge challenge to me, but that kind of drew me to that. It was like a puzzle to figure out. And when we opened the tasting room, of course, it was all white wines. At the time, several well-meaning local winery owners said to me, wow, that's great. You make great wines, but you're never going to make it if you don't have a red in your lineup. And I was making a few hundred cases when I opened, and I said, oh, well, if I don't sell them, I'll drink them. Within a few months, actually, we were sold out that year. So there really was a demand for them. And it's really a fun experience to introduce people that like wine that have never tried these unique varietals.
So besides the well-intended neighbors that said, we can't take you seriously because you don't have a red, which is silly, but I know that that's a common thing that you hear. What other challenges have you faced being, number one, a white winemaker, and two, being a female white winemaker?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I felt, and it was really difficult, when you have a vision of what you'd like to do, and anyone that's starting a small business can relate to this. You have a vision in mind and a way that you want to go. And a lot of, I think sometimes well-intentioned people will try to steer you away from your vision. And I think you just have to kind of suck it up and go with your heart and your desires and go forward. As the winemaker here, it was interesting when my husband would appear in the tasting room. Right away, people would talk to him, especially other males, and say, so you're the guy that makes the wine? And he would say, no, I don't know how to make wine. It's my wife. She makes the wine. Oh, yeah. Well, then you must be the guy that's funding this all. And he said, no, this is not the case. It's all her. And it took literally 4.5 years before that dynamic shifted, which, when you're kind of hearing things about maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that. And then you also have, people just not giving you credit for the work that you're doing. It takes, it sometimes kind of grabs your heart and you think, gee, is this the right way to go? But just have to kind of stick with your love. And that's really what's got me through this. And sometimes too, after a hard day of work in the vineyard, I'll say, oh, this is a lot of work. Because I started this in my 50s. I'm 64 right now. And it's literally, I'm the winemaker. My husband helps out. And we have, people that pick for us and tend the vineyards. But we're doing it all. And but when I sit down in the evening with a nice bottle of my wine, I say, yep, that's why I'm doing it. So,
and like I said before, Sue, I am so glad that you do that because it is such a pleasure to drink your product. Norma, you are a female sommelier, and you started studying this when, again, this is a very male-dominated industry, and you started this before there was even women that were interested in it.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, I've always been I love education. Like I said, I want to keep learning. And we moved to Napa Valley. I was really surrounded by a lot of sommeliers and great people who actually I'm very, very fortunate to have mentored with. But it was, I'd be the only woman in the whole tasting group. And
go figure.
Yeah. And to boot, I was a buyer for a retail sales shop that was the largest in Northern California, outside actually of San Francisco. that after 46 years folded, not because I was a buyer, but because, but because the owner passed away and his family didn't want to continue on with the business. Business was broke my heart. But anyway, I became, I guess you could say, a pretty powerful person because I had the purse strings to buy anything I wanted. It was primarily French wine and Italian and German wine. But I would get invited to these tastings, which all men, and I'd be kind of sitting there. And my whole thing has been the person who's really quiet in the group is the one you got to be careful of.
Yep.
That was me.
Yep.
That was me. I sit back and I would listen, and I learned a lot. And then the questions would be asked, and no one would seem to come through. And I would say, well, I would give my, impression of the correct answer. And they'd all look at me like, huh? Wow. Okay.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I know. And so it was so fun, but I did it in a way I want to learn, and I want to learn by listening. But you can learn by listening. And I was very fortunate to rub elbows with some of the greatest master somms and masters of wine in the industry. And the only female that I really ever met that was powerful was Jancis Robinson. And I was very fortunate to attend her small tastings at Copia in Napa when it first opened, and became a docent there so I could rub more elbows with these wonderful people. But yeah, I mean, then I was a buyer for 2 years in Las Vegas at some restaurants. We moved, I forgot to say that part. We lived there for 2 years. My husband opened some restaurants there, and I was a buyer for a couple of restaurants and sommelier, general manager. And that is truly, there's very little women there.
Period. That are in any sort of management, restaurant,
everything.
Venue, very few.
Yeah. And, it's just, I just didn't care. I just forged ahead, and everybody was so cool. They were really, really cool because they saw that my heart and soul was in it. And I think that's the main thing. You really, like Sue said, you have to have your heart and soul. And I didn't care. I wanted to learn as much as I could, and I put it to action. And I just didn't think of myself as a woman. I thought of myself as someone who wants to really do great at what I do.
So just to step back for just a moment, for those who do not know, what is the difference between a sommelier, a docent, and a buyer?
Okay. A docent is someone who actually volunteers to work for the arts, especially. And it could be in a teaching or artistic capacity, like in museums. And I'm sure the definition can go on, but I volunteered my time so that I could be with experts in the wine industry. And so I think it can be used for a number of different, volunteer type jobs. But I think it's primarily with the arts. A buyer is someone who a lot of buyers, we'll say, for example, for wine, don't have a sommelier background. They just know what the needs are for their particular retail store or their restaurant. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they are a sommelier. A sommelier is, and really a lot of the term sommelier is used quite frequently now, but it usually alludes to someone who is responsible for a restaurant wine list, and prepares the wine list, which I have done to match the current food offered or the menu offered. Now, a lot of people, I guess it's used quite differently now. It's really the term is very broad. It's very general for someone who actually might have a very great learned background in wine, but doesn't have the certification or has taken the exams. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. But you have all the certifications because you went and studied it and took all the exams.
I'm halfway there with actually the Master of Wine and the Master Sommelier, which is kind of funny because I didn't know what direction I wanted to go into. So what I was studying for the first two levels of the Master Somm And actually, you're not really a master som until you take the final exam. And that is, there's very, very few women and men who are in that cadre. But because I'm certified, I took the certification level, and I can say that I'm a certificate sommelier.
That's very impressive, because since there's very few of them.
Well, at the time, it was like 2006, I believe, and there were no women out of 55 taking the exam, and most of them were taking it for the third time around. And I passed it the first time, so I felt pretty darn good about that. And now there are quite a few people who have taken the certificate som level. So it is kind of confusing, and I understand the question. I hope I answered it.
No, you absolutely did. The same question that I posed to Sue: what has been the biggest challenge, or some of the challenges, of being one of the only female in this industry?
Just maybe being passed over for not getting the right deals, especially when I was a buyer. I've had a few like interviews with some restaurants that were just like, well, I don't know if we want to have so-and-so instead of you, or that kind of thing. I love men, and it's not about a man thing. It's just about, I really knew who the other candidates were, and I felt, and sometimes I was passed over for that. And that's fine, because I just take the next opportunity. That's okay. I learned from that experience. Let's see. I could think of a couple of situations when, I've been in a group tasting, like I said, that I wasn't deferred to for information. So I don't know. I
think we've many of us have been in situations similar to that, be it in a boardroom meeting, what have you, that
absolutely, yeah.
they're not deferring to you, even though you should be.
Right.
You are the expert in the room, and they're not deferring to you.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? You two ladies just pressed on and went, that's okay. I'm going to work harder, and I will show you. And you certainly have. Before the lockdown happened, you have such a beautiful experience in the tasting room. Sue, would you walk us through what that experience is? Because I got the opportunity to do that. And because we can't physically go see you, will you give us a walkthrough so we can imagine being in your tasting room in our minds?
Sure. Like I said, our tasting room is in our 100-year-old barn. The outside of the barn is kind of interesting because we have a round door that was custom designed for our space on the front of the building. You walk in, and you're greeted by one of our tasting staff, and you're presented with a menu with 5 different wines. And we start out with the first wine and then a food pairing. So just to give you an idea, we probably would start off with our Grenache Blanc, which is our number 1 planted varietal here at Acquiesce. Everything here is estate grown. And we have a little goat cheese pairing with a violet flower confit on top, which is a little violet flower jelly that we import from France. And then we might go on to our, let's say, our Roussanne. Our Roussanne is a very rare varietal, only 300 acres in the U.S. And we would have that paired with a manchego cheese with grated tomato and fresh rosemary. And then from there, we would maybe go on to one of our blends, our Belle Blanc blend. Yeah, so we have these little food pairings with each of the wines that we have. We have 10 different wines, but we release half of them in the spring and then the other half in the fall. I like to leave our blends in the bottle a little bit longer for them to develop, and so we release some of them later in the year. And then it's really kind of a fun experience when we have these wine and food pairings, because people really open up instead of just pounding down 4 or 5 samples of wine. It opens up a conversation of what people like to have their wines with, what kinds of foods. It opens up conversations about, what is in the dishes. We create specialty dishes, like we do a white bean with Provence mustard is one of our pairings. And how do you make it, and why does it pair well with the wine? And I think it really opens up a dialogue. And so it's not just a tasting per se, but it's a conversation.
It really is an amazing experience. I thoroughly enjoyed it when I got to do that. Norma, how fun is it for you to create the pairings that that everybody experiences in the tasting room?
Well, actually, Chef Rodney,
Chef Rodney.
My husband,
yeah, and he is a chef. Oh, he can cook. And so, well, Sue and Rodney do it together. And it's really fun because they'll roll out the new one. And before they roll it out, they'll invite me and some other employees in the back. They'll say, try this, try this, try this. We're like, oh, delicious, delicious, And that part is super fun. What I'm learning a lot about some of the nuances of some of the flavors, because I never really had a violet flower confit before. I mean, really, I knew what confit was, but it wasn't violet flower confit.
Yeah.
And just what I love is showing people when I'm pouring for them and talking about the pairings, talking about the components that Rodney and Sue have given so much thought to, about what is happening with their palate, with the taste of the wine and then the taste of the food. And we always approach it like, try the wine first. Now, and enjoy the aroma and the flavor profile of the wine, and then try the little taste of the pairing with it. Okay. And then go back to the wine again and see, what do you think about the comparing it or the contrasting it, and to open up your imagination about trying different things and not being afraid. People are very afraid. They really are, about food and wine pairing. I taught it for years at Napa College. That was something I forgot to say. I taught there professionally for 8.5 years. And one of the courses I taught was food and wine pairing. And people are very hesitant about anything that sounds weird, And well, here's the thing too. Sue's wines, Claret Blanche and Beurre Blanc and Grenache Blanc, all of these wines are so incredibly food friendly. I mean, it's almost bizarre. How could they be so versatile? So that is exciting too, to turn people onto that. So yeah, I love that part of it. And people love it too, and seeing the excitement on their faces, and it's very rewarding. And then they're like, "Oh my gosh, I got to do this." And fortunately, we can purchase those pairings in the tasting room along with the wine, so people are taking home an experience.
Yeah, and I took home the experience with me, and I will tell
Oh,
you that my son, my 23-year-old son, plowed through that violet flower confit. It was
yeah.
it was very good. So yes, I thank you for walking us through that visually, the experience, because it really is, and it's so fun and educational, and just a wonderful way to spend an afternoon. And you get to meet people in the room and exchange stories, and it's just a really good time. And I
Oh, I
can't wait
love
to be
it.
able to do that in
Yeah.
person eventually again. Um, Sue, what's some things that you have learned through this journey of owning a winery and being a winemaker that is so unexpected?
Well, I've often said, if you showed me a list of everything you had to do to get to where I am right now, I would have closed that book up and said, no, thank you. If you just take things a little bit at a time, you can really accomplish what you'd like to do. But as far as the journey for me, I was mentored in winemaking by a great winemaker teacher, Heather Pyle Lucas. And so she was my mentor in so many ways, because I realized quickly that, for one, my age and the fact that I'm a woman getting into this profession, I mean, this is a second half of my life. Something I never thought I would do. I never, as a small child, said, gee, I want to be a winemaker and own a winery. I mean, that just never happened. But, and several times I'd say, if you looked at my resume, you would say, what is this woman trying to do with her life? Because we moved around a lot and we moved to different locations. I had many jobs. I was a personnel assistant. I worked in sales. I was an office manager. I owned my own mail order business for some time. And if you'd look at that resume, you'd say, what the heck? But, in this career that I have now, every single one of those jobs has been
Yes.
my teacher. So, I remember the saying, sometimes you say, oh my God, what is going on here? And you look up at the sky and you say, that doesn't make any sense to me. But on the other side of the sky, someone's making a quilt and all you see are the stitches. You don't see the pattern. And so I think of that in terms of my life, that a lot of these pattern pieces have come together. And I was a quilter for a while too, so maybe that's why. But these pieces have come together. And, being a winemaker is a privilege in so many ways, because each year, each vintage represents a year of your life. Really, when you think about it, I think not in how many years I have left in my life, but how many vintages I have left. And it takes a year's worth of work to go into that one vintage, and you have to do it right. So a lot of attention to detail is placed on that, because it's not like when you bake a cake. If you make a cake and it doesn't turn out, you just make another cake the next day or the same day even. If you don't do everything necessary to get the quality wine, then you have another year before you can try it again. So I felt that being a mom, raising boys, has been very helpful to me, because I feel like these wines in the tank are my children. And once they're in the bottle, it's like when they go off to college. You don't have to worry about them as much. You still worry about them, but not quite as much, because they're safer. So I think the whole way of looking at the winery and my career here has been a study in life for me.
That is a wonderful and beautiful sentiment. And I hadn't thought of it that way before, but that makes perfect sense. And what an amazing gift and journey that it was unexpected, but boy, has it paid off big. Norma, the same question for you. What have you learned along the way in your journey that is unexpected?
I learned that a lot about that I love learning myself. I love it. I love getting people excited about the world of wine. And it is such a vast world. I mean, it encompasses so many things. Cultures, how people grow grapes, how they're different, how each varietal you taste is just so uniquely specific to who made it, where it's grown, what kind of barrel they used or they didn't use. And it's just meeting the most wonderful people who were inspiring to me and excited about what they did. And, really, truthfully, I was raising two kids alone when I'm doing all this. And a lot of people I know in the industry were going at it with very little funding, just doing it because they loved it and struggling to make ends meet. And that kind of spirit and love is so rewarding to see. And really, at the end of the day, and you look at those beautiful vineyards and you just say, oh my gosh, this is like paradise. I loved feeling the energy of the vineyard. And I love that about Acquiesce, is that I really felt there was a spirit there, that a spiritual tie. I felt very, very connected. And I had gone through a period of time where I wasn't feeling connected with things around the world. I love teaching. I absolutely love that. And I found that it was a little bit too much after 8 years of it. My classes got bigger and bigger, and I moved farther away where the commute was quite bad. And so I hated giving that up, and I lost a little connection with who I was and what I had done and how far I had come. And I kind of felt like I hadn't amounted to anything. And then when I saw Acquiesce, and I felt the connection there and Sue's message and what she had done, I was just like, I'm connecting here. I have to be here. I will do anything for these people. I love them so much, and the wine. And that really surprised me, because I didn't really know if I Lodi.
Right. Lodi? Exactly.
After being in Napa for 17 years and la-di-da-di-do, which I love. I mean, I have a lot of friends there and everything, but Joe, my husband and I were ready to move on and get more real about where we were. And so I think that was the biggest surprise, is just, wow, a Lodi winery called Acquiesce. And I'm feeling like this is my heart and soul and my spirit, and not to mention those beautiful wines. So I think that was something that is just extremely rewarding and makes me want to get up in the morning, because I know I'm going to have Acquiesce wine today.
Yes. And ladies, before I ask you the questions that I ask everybody, I first want to say thank you. Thank you for being tremendous examples for us to follow your heart, follow your passion, even when it may not make sense, even when you may not know how you're going to get there. You still focus and keep doing it, even when you have naysayers around you that says you can't, or you shouldn't, or not a good idea. Thank you for being such amazing individuals that we can aspire to, and can think, you know what, if they can do it, so can we. So thank you both for that.
Thanks, Audra.
You're welcome. We loved it.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I'm ask everybody these questions because it's fun for me and the answers are fascinating. So Norma, I'm going to ask you first. What is one book that you have read in your life that you think everybody should read?
Well, I know what changed my life and put me into the food and wine industry. And I have to tell you, it is My Life in France, Julia Child. Actually, she wrote it in her 80s, right before she passed. And her nephew, Paul Prudhomme, she narrated and he wrote it. And that really changed so much of my life. It is such a beautiful, glorious story. I have to also say that reading the World Atlas of Wine, which may sound so geeked out and crazy, the World Atlas of Wine. It's written by Jancis Robinson and Hugh Johnson, who are my total mentors. And I read those books. Those are not readable books overnight. In the 1980s, my son was in the hospital and I was sitting by his side. I had to kill some time. So I'm like, I'm going to start reading World Atlas of Wine.
But like you do, sitting in the hospital room.
For anybody who wants to even know anything about the wine world, or anything about geography or viticulture, or just about traveling, it is a wonderful, wonderful book. So I guess right off the top of my head, actually I keep Julia's My Life in France by my bedside, and I read chapters out of it occasionally.
I love that. Sue, what book do you recommend that everybody should read?
Well, I'm reading it right now. It has really nothing to do about wine. It's called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. I've always been a proponent of people's rights, and this is an eye-opening book about how the African Americans have been put in jail throughout the years. I mean, believe it or not, I'm a winemaker, but my high school term paper was about the Bolsheviks in Russia, and I studied psychology and sociology in college. But I always find that I have to keep in the know and learning about people around me. And Acquiesce, one of the things we do here is we give back. So there are several organizations that we give back to, and human rights and equality are a big part of that, but also some local Lodi Boys and Girls Club and some local charities too.
That is amazing. And thank you for that. Thank you. Before I wrap us up and let you run, there's a couple of things that I want to encourage the audience to do. One, go on their website. Their website is whitewinewinery.com. You can do a virtual tasting. They've put together kits. They've made it easy for you. You can go on their website and order it. I've done a virtual tasting, and it was really enjoyable. It was a great time, and these ladies, we have fun with them. Obviously, there's a banter back and forth, and it's incredibly educational. So I encourage you all to go and sign up for one of their virtual tastings, because you won't be sorry. I promise you that. Second, these ladies are being very, very generous to the audience. So for the month of November through November 30th, they are actually offering you a discount code. They're giving you a 15% discount code on the wine, and the code is WOMEN. So they're being very generous. Please go try their wine. Go order it. Order something for Thanksgiving. I promise you, you will not regret it. It is amazing, amazing, beautiful wine. Before I let you run, last final statement to the audience. Norma, what is your last final thought for the audience?
Well, I think just if you want to do something and you're not happy with what you're currently doing, then you better get going on that happy feeling and go for it.
That is awesome. Sue, last final statement to the audience.
I think just don't think in black or white. Don't think in terms of either I'm going to succeed or fail. Just go ahead and proceed with what it is that you'd like to do. And Audra, I want to thank you for giving women a platform to talk about their experiences and inspire other women, I hope. I think it's a great thing. I know you're kind of just starting in on this, but from the podcasts I've heard, I've been super, super impressed, and I feel honored to be on your program today.
Thank you for saying that. I that means a lot to me, because, of course, you know that I'm a huge fan of you ladies. And it is truly my goal to change the world one interview at a time. And I am so grateful that you have said yes to join me in that cause. So thank you for that. Like I said, I can't say it enough. Please go visit their website. Please go order their wine. You will not be disappointed. And they're being very generous this month. So go support your female small business owners and give to them. And I promise you, you will get tenfold back. Thank you all. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next time. That's our show. Before I let you go, I have some business that I need to get to. First, I want to thank my guests. I am continually awed at your generosity of spirit and the vulnerability that you continue to bring to our conversations. To you, my audience, you are incredible. Thank you for growing with me, and I hope that I continue to exceed your expectations. And to my team that helps me pull this off every single week. To our composer, Star Diva, who is amazingly talented. To Alan Bruckner, our graphic designer. Thank you for taking my crazy ideas and giving it life. To Savannah Boster, our social media manager. You do this so much better than I ever could. And last, but certainly not least, our producer, my number one son, Gavin Egan. Thank you for supporting your mom with her dream. I couldn't do this without you, kid. Please follow us on our socials at Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at arena_women. See you next week. that's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.
This is just